We're down in the Ox AirTech workshop, and we're going to upgrade our inner barrel, bucking, and nub on a brand new Airsoft electric gun. Stick around. All right, so I have got a brand new VFC Avalon on the table here. Orange tip, sticker, and all. This is straight out of the box. And we're going to do a very simple upgrade, which is essentially just the inner barrel, the bucking, and the nub. Now, I am sure if you asked 5 different airsofters what the best combination of inner barrel, bucking, and nub is, you're going to get 5 different answers because we're airsofters and we're very particular and we all have our very strong opinions on about what works good for us. So I'm not going to tell you that this is the best upgrade parts out there, but I will tell you the parts I'm using work great as a system. So on their own, these 3 individual parts are pretty decent, but it's really the magic happens when you combine all 3 together as a system. So this is just sort of the secret sauce I do in a lot of the brand new electric guns that I put out the door here, or even for some of my customers that just want to make their new or stock gun be a lot more consistent. Now, what do I mean by consistent? Um, every time we pull the trigger, we want that BB to fly in relatively the same path, the same trajectory, the same amount of hop. So it becomes very predictable when we pull that trigger what that BB is going to do. And from there, we can then, deal with any sort of the environmental things in our way, such as branches or wind or, any of those other obstacles that get in the way of that BB hitting the target. When it's consistent and predictable, effectively that makes our guns more accurate. So what am I putting in this? I have chosen the Maple Leaf 370 mil stainless inner barrel, 6.02. I have chosen the Maple Leaf MR Hop or Mr. Hop bucking in a 60 degree. I really like these guys, especially in combination with the Maple Leaf barrel. I find the MR Hop works great for the majority of electric guns, and for the HPA stuff, I usually gravitate towards the Macron bucking. Um, If you're doing this, I would grab one of each, try one. If that works great, awesome. If it doesn't, maybe try switching over to the other one. Between the MR Hop and the Macron, I usually find one of those is the golden ticket. And then the last little piece of the puzzle is this very small little Omega Maple Leaf bucking nub. And again, I find that this bucking nub and the MR Hop bucking really work well together. This just applies that nice equal force on the contact patch of the bucking that gives those BBs the maximum amount of lift and consistency. Okay, so let's get into the upgrade here. So the first thing I need to do is disassemble this Avalon. I'm sure everybody out there has a different gun than this, so you'll probably want to look for a video on how to disassemble your gun and get the unit out. What I'm going to show you is pretty typical for most M4 style airsoft guns. There might be a few different nuances when we get to the hop up as well, or like look at the hop up in detail, but this is going to cover a lot of that M4 style stuff. So first thing to disassemble most of these guys is just that front receiver pin. I just want to use my punch tool, push that out, and then I will make sure that I take a little bit of pressure off that charging handle. Sometimes that holds them up, and I can just separate. I'm gonna get this. This is a common issue. Just make sure you get that dust cover out of the way. Otherwise, it's going to be pushing against that pin. You won't be able to figure out why the receivers won't come apart. All right, there we go. Lower from the upper, separated. So there's our upper receiver. I can now just pull out the whole inner barrel and hop up assembly as one, and I can set my upper aside. We're not going to need that. So this is our hop-up unit. Again, this is a very typical M4 style rotary hop-up unit. How it works is as I dial the adjustment, this arm here, I'll find something to point with. This arm basically works like a lever on this pin. So as I dial the adjustment, the arm then levers, and this is what pushes pressure from the nub down onto the contact patch of the bucking. So in order to take this apart, usually the first step is I want to get this rotary dial adjustment off. Now, most of these guys run like a little circlip here. You can try prying it off with a pick. I have the right tool for the job here, which is essentially just some ring nose pliers, and you can see how easy that comes off now. Now I'll just lightly pull on the dial and that comes off. I can set that aside. Just some notes on doing this. Make sure you've got a nice clean area to work on. I've got a nice new blue rubber mat here. And make sure you keep your parts organized as well. A lot of these parts are under tension. So if you apply too much force or, try to pry too hard, stuff can go firing across the room. It's very small. It's very hard to see. And you might end up having to, buy some replacement parts if you're not careful. So just go slow and take your time. All right, this is a adjustment ring or like a little spacer ring. So we were definitely going to need that. That just keeps the barrel from moving around and wobbling on the end of the bucking or the end of the hop up. Sorry. Um, Next piece is I want to get this adjustment arm out of there. It's held in by a pin. You can see a flange side on that and open on here. So I'm basically going to push that pin outward and then I should be able to pull the adjustment arm off. So I'll use a flathead screwdriver against my thumb or finger. And I'm just going to apply light pressure to push on that pin. Out it comes. And then I should be able to just lightly coerce that to come out. There we go. And now I should be able to pull out our adjustment arm. Whoop, with the stock nub. Now this is very indicative of a stock nub. They are just a small little piece of rubber. I don't know if you can see that. They're very soft. So that doesn't necessarily give us the best adjustment or the best sort of downward force because as I'm pushing force on the arm, it's basically compressing this rather than applying pressure to the BB. So that's where that Omega nub is going to make a huge difference for us. So the next step is I need to remove the inner barrel from the hop unit, and it's basically held in by this little clip here. So these can be a bugger to get off. I like to use a very sharp flathead screwdriver. And what I'll do is I'll grab it at the top edge here, and I'll just try to maneuver that screwdriver and put some downward force, slowly then rotate, and the clip should pop right off. Now, again, this is one of those parts that could go flying across the room, so you just want to be very careful and slow. But once you get it started, it comes off nice and easy. So once I have that clip off, I can start removing the barrel. And I'll just get a good grip with it. On this hand, I'll grab the hop unit with my other hand, and I'm just going to rotate and pull the two apart. Now, hopefully, the bucking should come right out with the barrel, so we don't have to fish it out. There we go. Separated, and there's the bucking. So I'll just pull that out. So hop up unit, stock bucking, and stock brass barrel. Now in part 2, I think we'll make a video and we'll just talk about the differences between some of the materials on, this OEM brass barrel versus this new maple leaf, which is actually a stainless barrel. Let's get this out of the packaging here. Now, the first thing I'm going to notice is this is substantially heavier. It feels quite a bit more solid. One of the things, I'll see if I can get this on camera, but there's a little cutout window on this barrel. I don't know if you can see that on the camera there. And it's quite a bit larger on the maple leaf than on the stock brass barrel. And that's a good thing. That is designed for this maple leaf bucking to basically that contact patch to give me as much contact on the BB as possible. So they make that window a little bit bigger. It's basically designed for these buckings so that they fit in there and give me that good contact patch against the BB. All right, so let's set that brass barrel aside. Let's get our bucking out. And again, this is the MR or Mr. Hop in the 60-degree gyrometer. So maybe that's something we can cover in the next video as well is, what the heck is the difference between a 50, 60, 70, and 75 or 80-degree bucking? Just, if you don't want to get into the nerdy end of it, I usually recommend just starting with a 60°. It's kind of the most common, um, in terms of softness and popularity, and will give you usually the most of the time with the weights that the average airsofter is using, will give you the best amount of hop. So on this barrel, you can see there's a cutout at the bottom, and there's a little, ridge inside the bucking. So that ridge inside the bucking is basically gonna fit on that cutout. Now on the other side here, if you kinda see inside, I know this is gonna be very difficult to get on the camera, but there's a little contact patch in there, and that contact patch is what's gonna fit in that window. So when I get this all lined up, I'm gonna get the ridge into the cutout. I'll basically just pinch it on the side and get the contact patch into the window, and that should fit on there so I don't feel any raised edges. It should fit nice and smooth. As well, I'm gonna just do a visual inspection inside that barrel. I'm gonna put a little bit of light finger pressure on the window or where the window is, and just make sure that that contact patch is sitting in the barrel nice and even, which it is. This looks great. All right, so the next step is let's install the barrel back into the hop unit. So I'm going to do exactly the opposite I did of when I took this apart. I'm going to get my cutout, which is the bottom of the barrel, to the bottom of the hop unit. And I'm just going to apply some light pressure. If I feel it kind of stop, I'll just rotate things just slightly just to work it in there till eventually it'll come to a stop right there. Now, unless there's a nice injection molded seam on this hop unit, so I'm just going to make sure that that injection molded seam aligns with the cutout on the barrel, and that's going to tell me that we're pretty close to center when I reinstall this. So the next step is using our clip that we pried out of there, and I'll just use some light finger pressure and push that into place. Now, if the clip doesn't go in, now that went in great. If the clip doesn't go in perfectly, what you might have to do is just keep your thumb or finger pressure on that clip and just give that barrel a little bit of rotational force or in and out, and that will basically help that clip seat into place. And you'll notice it'll give a nice distinctive little click sound. And there, when I look at it, there won't be any sort of raised edges. That clip will sit in there nice and flush on all the edges of the hop unit. So let's take our spacer. We can slide it back on the barrel. And I'll just push that down into the hop unit. And again, that just keeps the barrel stabilized in that hop unit. It keeps it from bouncing around too much. All right, so the next step is let's get this Omega nub in here. I really like these guys. These Omega nubs have been awesome little performers. And again, it's one of those things that works really good with the maple leaf buckings. So, you can see as compared to the stock one, this is actually a nice hard rubber. So when I apply force down on the hop adjustment arm, this guy isn't going to squish out. It's actually going to give me that force to push the contact patch onto the BB. So I'll drop this into the hop unit. I'll use my tweezers just to make sure I get it in a position I want it, which is going to be on top of the window. I will then drop my adjustment arm, and you can see this cutout on the arm. That's going to fit onto the top of the Omega nub to keep it centered. Now, the next step is I need to reinstall this pin. I'll use like a little punch tool or something, and I'll just come in from the far side just to make sure that that adjustment arm is sort of centered on the hole, and then I can hopefully just push that pin right back through. There we go. Now, the last step of reassembly here is our adjustment arm. Now, or sorry, adjustment dial. Now you can see on the adjustment arm, there's a little tab that sticks out here. Now that little tab fits into a cutout on the dial. So as I turn the dial, it basically makes the arm work like a lever. and lifts up this tab and pushes down on the nub. So when I install this dial, I want to do it with the least amount of pressure possible. So I'm going to look at the dial. So where the tab is closest to the center, I'm going to make sure I got the cutout closest to the center as well. And if I have to, I can just apply a little bit of downward force on that adjustment arm, and the rotary dial should slide right on. Before I put the lock ring on, I'm just going to test it by applying some hop, and you can see that that arm is starting to lever down. Now, the last thing I like to do is a little bit of a visual check looking down the barrel. And what I'm looking for is when I apply hop adjustment, I want to make sure that the contact patch is traveling nice and level and it's sitting flat inside the barrel. I don't want it to be cockeyed or off canter like that. When it's nice and flat, I know that's going to apply a nice, even patch or contact to my BB, and I'm going to get that nice, consistent hop up. All right, so let's look down the barrel. And I know I'm definitely not going to be able to get this on camera. It's very tough to see. I usually want to have a light source at the far end. So when I'm looking down the barrel, I can actually see that contact patch. And I'll just apply a little bit of hop here. Yeah, that looks awesome. That patch is now sitting nice and level. So I know when the BB hits it, it's going to be a really consistent amount of hop on it. So I'll dial it right off, and then I can reinstall our lock ring using my lock ring pliers. Right tool for the job, makes it go easy. There we go. Just give one last little quick dial there, make sure everything's moving freely, make sure our arm is levering. One last visual check. Make sure I've got good flat hop. And then I will reassemble my electric gun. So barrel should just slide into the upper assembly quite easily. Just like that. There's some arms in there, so it should fit in perfectly and move right to the front of the barrel. And then I'm going to reattach the upper receiver to the lower receiver. Make sure your pin is out so you're not breaking your hop up. Make sure your dust cover is closed so everything moves in there nice and well. And once I get it seated, I should just be able to close that pin up, and we are done. All right. So there you go. That's a super simple upgrade. And it actually is going to give me some pretty good benefits. I usually, like I said, I find that this combination, that maple leaf stainless barrel, either Mr. Hop or the Macron hop and that Omega nub, I mean, I usually find that that's a pretty tried, true, tested combination, and it's fairly inexpensive. As well, it's a combination you'll probably find at most of our Canadian shops, and they stock a lot of this stuff. So it's easy to find. It's relatively inexpensive. I would say under $100 to buy all three parts, and it's very quick to do. And the benefits are probably going to be pretty great for your stock or brand new gun. All right, there you go. Thanks for joining me. And like I said, maybe in part two, we'll kind of nerd out and we'll get into some more of the physics of hop and why we want it and what it does for us. All right, stay safe out there. Call your hits. See you on the next one.